Okay, so we're going to get started. Just in lieu of Randy, I'm standing in, but Lewis and Candy are going to give us, I guess, a slideshow or a presentation on their trip to the Arctic. But I want to say one thing. So since they're both on and Gigi's on, congratulations to some of our award winners in the wildlife contest. If you didn't see it, we'll put a link to the contest in the next newsletter, so you can go on YouTube and watch it. And with that, I'm going to turn it right over to the Arctic Explorers.
Thank you.
Arctic Explorers.
I'll probably hit mute and make sure y'all don't hear all the noise in the background here. We're doing a little moving still. So, all right, you guys.
All right, thanks, David.
We just need to share our screen.
We need to share our screen.
Yep. Oh, yeah. Let me do that. Well, yeah, you should already be able to do that.
Yeah. There we go. Can everybody see that?
All right, cool.
Yes.
Okay. And seriously, I mean, especially since it's a small group, please feel free to ask questions and just shout them out. I mean, we do not have a formal presentation. It's more of a slideshow and a chat. So it's pretty informal.
And other than showing pictures to friends, we've never done anything like this. So pardon our unrehearsed, winging it, seat of the pants. We stopped working on this about an hour ago. So so our trip, see Baffin Island up at the top there, that was where we went, which is northern Canada. And sort of the history of this trip for us, we found out about it in 2018 by a friend who who went on a different polar bear trip, and the photographer that was there was talking to them about this Baffin Island trip. So Trish told us about it, and I was absolutely fascinated when she said, it's up there, it's camping on the sea ice, it's late March, early April, it's cold, and the hope is to see polar bears, ideally just moms coming out of the den with cubs. So it was just such a unique trip and sparked my interest. So at that point, I started looking into the trip and I couldn't find it. And I won't go into all the long, boring details, but I eventually did find it and circuitously got in touch with the photographer, whose name is Andy Skillen, who had told our friend about it. And at the time, there were only, this trip runs for 4 weeks. Arctic Kingdom is the name of the company that does it. And it's 4 weeks, different groups, back to back, because it's all set up on the sea ice. So once, they A, need enough light, and B, not too cold. And then, before things start getting too warm and softening up. So I managed to sucker 6 of our friends, 3 other couples, into agreeing to do the trip. So there were 8 of us, and not with Andy, not with the photographer, and we were just going to go for a week and do this trip. And so that was in 2018. It was booked for 2019. So we were booked for 2020 or 2020, sorry. And we all know what happened then. It got canceled shortly before we were supposed to go, like 3 weeks or something, maybe. And 2021 was booked. So we got bumped to, luckily, in hindsight, to 2022. So that's when we went. Our trip was March 26th to April 5th of this year. And
we were the second week out of the 4.
Second week out of the 4. And this is Arctic Kingdom's been around a long time, but this was only the 3rd or 4th time they've ever run this trip. So kind of new and still working on some of the nuances, but it's spectacular what they did. So the big picture here, that's Baffin Island up there, as we said. And our route, you leave out of Ottawa, which is down here. So we left from Jackson, went to Ottawa, had a couple days in Toronto beforehand. That's a different story. For those of you who have been to Churchill or know about Churchill, that's where that is. That's not where we went. This is Hudson Bay in here. So we flew from Ottawa to Iqaluit, and the territory is called Nunavut, which is all of this Canadian territory, not a province. And so we flew to Iqaluit from Ottawa. That's the biggest town in Nunavut, which is a couple thousand people. We spent the night there, had a little tour of the town, and then the next day on a charter plane, thank you, flew to Qikiqtarjuaq is the name of that town up there, which is just abbreviated as Kik. It's easier to say. And so we flew into there, we landed, and we were picked up right then by the guys from the camp and on snowmobiles, and everything we did from here was on snowmobile. So these two pins, so here's Kik where we landed, and Candy, you know our route better probably by snowmobile.
We left the town and we came down through here and then crossed over right along the edge of the mountains and came into camp. So you are on the sea ice the whole time that you're going on the snowmobile, but they stick pretty close to land.
Yeah, that trip it's about 60 kilometers or so.
And then just, you know, these are the last maps, we promise you. So camp is here, and almost every morning we went over into this area. This is where the polar bears were most active. They had seen one or two over here the week before, but we didn't see any in that area. So it was an hour and a half to 2 hours to get over into this area where we saw the polar bears. That was our plane. Thought it was
Tail
good
of our
luck.
plane, Canada North Airlines.
How long was that first trip to the camp?
I think it took about 4 hours.
Yeah, it took several hours, but we moseyed. We did a little sightseeing along the way. We stopped and had lunch along the way. So, you know, there's no busting a hump to get anywhere. And we took not quite when we came back, when we were catching the plane on the way back, I think we did it in 2.5 hours or 3 hours, but you know, we weren't looking for animals, we weren't sightseeing, we didn't stop for a meal. So it's probably about 2.5 hours comfortably on a snowmobile.
These pictures are from Iqaluit. So we stopped there for a day and kind of wandered around. And of course, you know, Hudson's Bay companies everywhere up there. They kind of took over, but now they're not.
Old building.
And Iqaluit's just a cool little town. We went to the museum and looked at the sea ice, and that boat just didn't quite make it, but I thought it was kind of cool. And that's our hotel.
Nice little, it was a little boutique hotel, actually. Pretty, it was kind of surprising what's there, because it's just a different world, different community, and
they do
beer tasting.
Yeah, we had a beer tasting. They actually were a dry community until I think they said like 3 or 4 years ago, and now they have a microbrewery and a liquor store. So very good beer.
That is most of our group on the charter plane from Iqaluit to Kik. This was interesting because they normally don't do a charter flight, but they changed from a commercial flight, which goes into all these villages and none of it due to COVID, because in the villages, they just didn't want
people coming in.
They want people coming in. So it's a charter plane. Then we got met by the sleds. So this was new, and they threw a 50-pound weight limit at us
For everything, camera gear, everything,
total
clothes.
So, you know, I think most of us were kind of freaking out because you have, you know, it's a heavy clothing thing and quite a bit of camera gear. So you had to wear all your winter gear on the flight. So, you know, our pockets were just stuffed. My jacket alone, I think with lenses, weighed over 18 pounds. And then of course you get to the flight and they really couldn't have cared less about the weight. Nobody said anything. Nothing was weighed, but it probably helped because we didn't need as much as we had. You don't wear a whole lot of clothes there. You're wearing everything you got all the time.
And by the way, all those people that we invited in 2020, all but 3 of us dropped out because I think all the other couples read the memo that it was going to get to -40 and that there was no alcohol at camp. And they all went,
I think it was the temperatures more than the alcohol.
Anyway.
But yeah, 2 of the couples, is when the trip was canceled in 2020, they backed out of it. And our friend George's wife, like 3 weeks before we left, decided that they had done a bunch of traveling and she was just wiped. So there are some videos thrown in here, and this is a little video of the flight going to
Okay.
So you just see the landscape there, and it's just, surreal is the word that I kept using. It's just really unimaginable.
Takes a while for Lightroom to load photos after videos. There you go.
This was our first polar bear that we actually saw from the air on that flight. And the pilot was nice and actually circled around so we'd get a good view of him. Bear wasn't too thrilled with the plane.
It's amazing that you ever see any bears up there because it is just it's so vast. It's just vast whiteness. That's the town of Kick as we approach. So I think there's about 350 people that live in that community. They're playing. And that's on the sled.
So that's not quite, that's not the airport right behind us, is it? No, that's just town. So yeah, we just loaded in the sled and loaded up our bags and camera gear and off we went.
So this is what it looked like.
So this is our day-to-day stuff with the snowmobile pulling the sleds. That second one there is actually the chuck wagon where all the food was kept and tables and all sorts of supplies.
The sleds are called comatics, and the base of the sled they use as a base to, if they go hunting, to bring seals back, whatever. And then they made those little kind of seated areas for this particular trip. It's got a plexiglass window so you can look through, but you keep the wind off of you, and you can keep some of your gear down below. And it's like riding a roller coaster.
Bumpy. Turns out that when sea ice freezes, it's not too smooth.
You skipped the video.
Oh, I skipped a video.
There you
Sorry.
go. This will give you the perspective. Lewis was shooting this as we were riding along.
I just sort of had my arms stuck out the side of the sled to get an idea of what it looked like and what it felt like to ride in the sled.
So even though it was billed as a polar bear and spring cubs trip, we did have a lot of time for landscape. That's just Lewis doing landscape. That's kind of the group set up the first lunch that we had. So the tent over to the left is the bathroom tent, because everybody's fascinated with how did you go to the bathroom? Well, the guys just went to the bathroom like they always do. But you have a lot of clothes on, so it's a little harder for girls. So they actually had that tent, and they had like a little plastic toilet seat that was no bottom to it, and it just stuck in the sea ice. And so it's very, very cush. That's a little close up of the tables. They always had hot chocolate and coffee, and we each got our own thermos and hot soup, homemade soup every day.
So this would get set up like a couple times a day. Generally, we'd stop and have coffee and some snacks or something, and then for lunch a little bit more involved. But it's just amazing. They hauled all this stuff out of the chuck wagon and set it all up, and delicious meals, hot soup every day. Good. We were well fed, kept us warm.
That's a potty tent.
Candy's more fascinated with it than I am.
I used it. And that's camp.
So that's camp as we came up on it, and you see it's kind of in the middle of nowhere. And this is the only outfit. There is nothing else like this around there. This is not a common thing by any means to do, and I really wonder if anybody else could have the wherewithal or the resources, or if they could get permission to do it.
What's up of camp?
So close with the camp, these are the tents. It's surrounded by an electric fence, keep the bears out. We've never had an issue with bears coming to camp that when we were there, or the week before. Candy said we were the second week. So I think the bears respect the area, and not a heavily populated bear area, but anything could come cruising through anytime. And these tents are called,
There's a close up.
No. Oh, there you go. So these tents are called Arctic ovens. When we read about these tents, they call them double wall insulated tents, which just fascinated the daylights out of me when you're expecting 30 and 40 below temperatures. But they were, is there another one?
Mhm.
They were awesome. In fact, it was hot. So that's a heater that's in there. Everything was, all this was piped through, all the tents were heated. Our tent was heated and they ran all the time, and there was really nothing like a thermostat. I had a little thermometer on my camera bag that broke off, and I just hung it on the top line of the tent where you can hang some clothes. And the one time I looked at it, it was 85 degrees in there. So there was one night when we were chilly sleeping. These sleeping bags also have an inflatable mattress under them. So pretty comfortable and insulated from below. And at least there we weren't cold. We didn't experience the 30 and 40 degree temps that they promised or threatened, however, or warned us about. We were probably, on occasion below zero, but for the most part, single digits and maybe in the teens.
During the day. At
During
night, it
the
was
day,
-10.
yes. night, a different story.
This is loading up to go out in the morning, and you can see there's a Pelican case on the back of the sled. So that's where you could put your camera bag, or we put long lenses in there, and then had a short lens with us in the sled. So kept everything pretty well secure.
So the guys would just line up by your tent and you just bring it all out in the morning. And those little vestibules in front of the tent, we'd left a good bit of stuff out because you don't want the camera gear going in and out of cold and warm temps. So if we came back at the end of the day and we were going to go back out shooting, we'd just leave the camera outside, take the batteries in. And this is right here, a hole over a seal den. So the bears there, they're pretty much their main source of food, and what they're looking for is seals, ring seals in particular. So they, just wander the land, sniffing around, looking to smell out a seal, and the dens are underneath here where the pups are born and kept until they're ready for the water. The seals have access to the water. So the bears punch a hole through the top of it, and they're hoping to snag a seal before the seal can hit the water. So that's a little bit closer view. One of the guides actually could crawl in there. He was basically sitting in there. So they were fairly spacious. This thing went out in like 3 different directions. So we saw quite a few of these pop through. We never saw any evidence of a successful hunt. We didn't see a hunt per se, but if they're successful, then you see a lot of blood around them from the poor seal. But so we saw several of these. Polar bear footprints, tracks.
That was our first land bear, about a 5 to 6 year old male that we ended up seeing a couple more times. But you can see that it'd be hard to see them behind the icebergs. Another view of the sled. Mom with 2 yearling cubs. So the way they find the polar bears is they send out 2 scouts ahead of time on snowmobiles, and they go out about an hour and a half before we do, and they try to locate, footprints and stuff in the snow, tracks, and then identify where the polar bear is. And the goal is to have us set up so that if the polar bears are on the move, we're already set in place from far away, and they just walk right by us. And that's what these guys did. If they find a polar bear that's stationary, then they sit with it for a little while. If it seems pretty calm and relaxed, then they would bring us closer, because we're 5 snowmobiles and a lunch wagon, so we're not quiet. And then if they were still comfortable, we would come up even closer. We saw 2 sets of moms with yearlings, and they were the most nervous. I thought that was interesting. They just didn't really want to have anything to do, and they just walked on by pretty quickly. They're cute.
One of those cubs. They came fairly close. I think maybe they were 30, 40 yards when they walked by us. These guys were, it's hard to tell a little bit, or maybe not. These guys were not comfortable at all. So we let them go pretty quickly. They seemed to be not happy with our presence. And the guys, the company, the guides, everyone was very good. If if the scene isn't right, if the bears aren't comfortable, we don't go chasing after them. We don't stress them out. If it's either good or it's not.
What's your zoom on this shot?
I don't know. Do I have?
Should be in develop. Or put the histogram back on. Put up the.
Oh, I thought I could do it from there.
Oh, maybe.
Yeah, it didn't work.
Hmm.
I was shooting, and I don't know if this is mine or Candy's. I was shooting almost exclusively with either a 500mm lens or a 70-200. So this, if I had to guess, this was with the 500 and cropped.
So I shot that scene with a 300 with a 1.7 on. It was at 420.
500, 510.
510. Sorry, I can't do that. I was thinking of the 1.4. More polar bear tracks, mom and cubs.
So this is that same male, and as you see here, the one guide has a gun, in which all the guides did. They don't use bear spray up there because it doesn't do very well in the cold weather. So they all have rifles. Polar bears are a little bit, different animal than our black bears and our grizzly bears. We really didn't have any issues. There's one we'll show you a little bit later where they did have to use that, and they just use them to scare them off, to kind of fire
Cracker shells.
by them cracker shells. Yeah, they're not looking to kill the bear, although if they had what was necessary, if something came, they're very, very safety conscious. We couldn't do anything without somebody around us, which is another story I'll try and remember to tell later on. It was humorous about being out there without anybody. So that he was coming up, and he was pretty curious with us, and pretty relaxed. It wasn't a stressful thing at all. Actually, I really like this, the way this snow was and kind of iced up. So it was actually just an iPhone shot.
Northern Lights.
And then we had Northern Lights. We were there for 8 nights, and we were blessed with 5 nights of aurora.
Okay.
So we're actually above the aurora belt. We're north of the aurora belt. So we had, depending on what was going on that night, and we were there. I know there was some aurora seen in Jackson when we were there. So probably the same storm, I guess we would call it. So there were times it was in one direction. There was times we were surrounded 360 degrees. They were straight overhead. Really, really wonderful aurora sightings and photography. And I love shooting aurora.
Hey, Louis, did you say y'all saw them every night you were there?
5 out of the 8.
5 out of the 8. Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
We had really clear skies.
Yeah, we were, you see how clear the sky is. So it really worked out well for that. And they would ask every night, if there's a, somebody would wait up, and if there's aurora, do you want to be, are you going to shoot it? Do you want to be woken up? And, I was always yes, 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 yes. And I think by the end, the guides were like, oh, please don't be aurora tonight. Please, we got to get some sleep. Because which we sort of alluded to, but so we were out all day. We'd get up at or have breakfast at 7 or 7:30, and we'd be out like half hour to an hour later, and then gone all day. You don't go back to camp during the day because we're pretty far off. So we get back to camp anywhere from probably 5 to 7, somewhere in there, and we had aurora starting typically maybe 9:30, but 10:30 or so relatively early actually. So lots of nice foregrounds. Got to use oh, sorry, Candace moved me along. And this was a little igloo they built that we could use for a little foreground, put a little light in there. You see the shooting stars. I saw, personally a few of them, but I would say the majority of my aurora pictures had shooting stars in them. So faint, you just don't catch them with the naked eye.
So on those, do you have any idea what shutter speed you were using?
Most of mine are probably in the 6 to 15 second range.
And I was like 8 to 13. I didn't go below 13. one day we did not go out to our polar bear hunting area. The scouts weren't being very successful, so we stayed kind of close to camp. And so because they have to haul everything out there, they actually place the camp near icebergs so that they can go chop water from the iceberg because that's fresh water. And they melt it down in the kitchen. So they took us to the iceberg where they were doing the chopping, and we got to kind of climb around it. So there's a series of pictures of people climbing and our guides at the top. And
It was a pretty hairy climb to get up there. We didn't all do it. One guy did.
and then they were sliding down
And they would, yeah, then everybody
Fun.
sort of slid down.
and just scenery.
So very, very typical scene of what it looked like. And all that rough stuff is all small icebergs.
Clothing. So when Lewis got excited about going, I went, I'm going to freeze my fanny off. But as he said, it was really warm. We had Canada Goose coats on and lots of layers. And I had electric hand warmers that I could put under my photography gloves. And then I could actually take my big mittens off and I could shoot with the electric ones. I would highly recommend them, even for Yellowstone in the wintertime. And I had electric insoles in my boots. So did Lewis. So that was
Yeah, so
pretty handy.
tons of layers. I don't think anybody really had a big issue with being cold. Maybe our California friends did, but
Mostly at night.
fairly comfortable, all things considered. This is Naya, one of the scouts' dogs. She's a 9 or 10-month-old, really sweetheart of a dog. So we on that day we didn't see polar bears. We were back early, and we decided to run Naya around and practice panning. And it was sort of my first action photography with the Z9, actually. Here she got a hold of Andy's sunglasses, which survived. And this is Ray, one of the Inuit guides, and the clothing that they had, and I just can't say enough wonderful things about these guys. Really, really nice and really helpful and really appreciative of the land, and gave us so much. So he let me take this picture of him. I was a little bit concerned that maybe some of them didn't want to be photographed or videoed, but they were fine with it. So I took this picture and turned it black and white, and it's actually one of my more favorite pics of the trip so far at this point.
It's like the second day or so, and Ray walked up to Lewis and said, "I love your beard. May I take a picture of you?" And so Lewis said, "Sure." And then we said, "Can we take a picture of you?" So anyways, big guy.
Did he have like traditional made clothing on, or was that?
The fur is fox,
Around his
and we
waist.
were debating earlier about his jacket. Not sure if that is or not, but there was sealskin jacket. You'll see Jay's seal pants later on. So yes, a lot of them do have traditional fur and skin clothing.
And mittens.
Beaver mittens, one of the guys. Yeah, they don't have beavers up there, but they obviously do some trading for some of this stuff.
They trade, and a lot of their girlfriends and wives are the ones that are sewing their clothing, and it's absolutely exquisite. I mean, it's just beautiful, decorative. And
these two icebergs were close to camp. We walked there on, was this the same day? Yeah, I think the same day. We didn't see bears, so we took a walk over there, and just to walk around them and to photograph them. And then as we were there a good while, and then the sun started setting, so we got a little bit of color. And that's one thing, I know in wildlife photography, certainly most of us love wonderful light behind us, or early morning, late evening light. And that was one thing that we just weren't able to do with polar bears, because of the fact that for the most part, our sightings were an hour and a half or two from camp. There just wasn't enough time to get there early enough or stay late enough to get any, sunrise, sunset color with the animals. So, where did I make my little notes on?
Lewis has notes out.
I have notes all over the place.
He's a
Sorry,
note
I'm
guy.
so organized. So our when we got there, sunrise was at 5:40 in the morning, and moved up to 5:07 a.m. by our last day, and sunset was 7:02, moved to 7:30. So, there was just no way we'd have to, get on the sleds by 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, and then of course it's dark and not safe and all that good stuff. So, but this was a nice night to get the icebergs with that sunset color.
More northern lights.
More northern lights. Can never have enough aurora. So this was shooting straight up, or almost straight up. This might be the picture. I think there's 7 different shooting stars in this picture. And Andy convinced most of us, I think, but certainly me, because I'd never done it, to do a time lapse.
Oh,
So this was, I can't remember, 150 or 180 pictures, and I just locked down the cable release and let it fire, and then put them together in QuickTime, I think is what I used to do that.
So this day, my favorite day, the scouts found a mom with 2 spring cubs, and it was probably, I don't know, 5-10 degrees out, which for a polar bear is warm because it was sunny. And they actually watched her dig this day den, and none of them had ever seen this behavior, the Inuit guides as well as our other guides. And so they watched her dig this day den. She climbed in, the cubs climbed in with her, and she was super comfortable. So they brought us a little bit closer, and then they actually, she didn't care, brought us to about 125 feet away from her. And we were able to sit with her for about 3.5 hours, and she was just sleeping, and the cubs would poke their little cute tiny little heads out. And at first we were kind of all in our sleds, and then she was so relaxed that we were able to kind of move up and down about probably 35-40 feet, so you could get different shots at different angles. And it was just magical to see them.
Special afternoon, really, really cool.
And we had a little sunbow on the way home.
I don't know if there's an official name for that, but I kept calling it a sunbow, or maybe it's a cloud bow.
This was
And
snack.
This is snack, yeah. So we get back, and Patrick, our wonderful chef, always had these incredible creations. What he could do out there on a chunk of ice was just amazing. So a couple different kinds of oysters and some breads, and we'd eat a snack and we'd be full, and then would come this amazing dinner.
He made sushi one night. I mean, he has to bring everything in at the beginning of the trip, because the guides only go to town when they pick up new guests. So all the food comes back out with them, and he was just fabulous. We ate very well. That's Patrick on the right.
That's Patrick and me, and I stole Patrick's hat, or I borrowed it. Somebody had left this thing behind. It's like a stocking cap with goggles built into it. So you flip the thing down from the stocking cap and it turns into goggles. So I had to try it on. Then I came home and I found it on Amazon, so I now own one.
2 of our guides, J and J, really easy to remember, and a frozen Arctic char that they were having for lunch. It was really good. They shared it with us.
Yep.
Again, putting up the toilet tent. This day was like a beach day. We got there, it was so warm, everybody's stripping off their coats, and Lewis is not digging the hole for the loo. He's actually digging himself a recliner. That was pretty toasty that day.
I did not know I was being videoed in my creation. It was really, really comfortable.
It'll take a second. There he is.
It was even more comfortable when I built the pillow in.
And then we found this is a different sow with 2 spring cubs, and she was also pretty relaxed, but we didn't get any closer than about 200 feet to her. There's several photos in the series, and you don't think about this when you go up there, but we ended up having 3 or 4 sunny days, and the heat waves were hard. We all got back to the camp, and you didn't have a lot of time to review photos, and Lewis was using the Z9 for the first time. He's like, oh, my photos are soft. And I'm like, well, I think mine are too. And then everybody else in the group was, and it wasn't that they were soft. It was just that there were a lot of heat waves. So post-processing has been kind of interesting and working, once we found out and kind of realized how distracting they were, we could kind of compensate for it out in the field. But
in general, I would say it was pretty challenging photography. Vast spaces, obviously everything is just snow and ice and white bears when you get them. So, a ton of light. I would look at shutter speeds. I'm at 4,000th and 5,000th of a second or something like that, just to not blow things out.
And ISOs were at like 160 to 250. I mean, that was great. You didn't really have to worry about noise except at night.
Challenging photography, and it's been, some challenging processing too.
But they were so
And
cute.
these cubs were just adorable. These guys were a good distance away, probably 200 to 300 yards. Back to camp, and I felt the need to crawl into the igloo and see what it looked like from in there. Should have taken a nap. One of the other guides, Johan with Naya. So this night we actually went over to those two large icebergs to do Northern Lights, which was just incredible. We only did it the one night, and I wish we could have done it more, but they had to load us up in the snowmobiles, pretty close, just a few minutes to get there. But it just worked out that was the only night we did it. But just wonderful subject matter to put with the Aurora. This one we light painted the iceberg a little bit.
Another mom with yearlings, and like I said, she also was like, yeah, I don't really want to have anything to do with you. Not stressed, just walking by.
And we had a couple of times where we found ptarmigan, actually. It's pretty cool, a group of 6 or 7 of them.
And there were lots and lots of fox tracks that we saw, and tons of polar bear tracks everywhere. And we never saw a fox. Apparently there's Arctic and red fox up there, and the red fox are predating the Arctic fox dens. So that was a little disconcerting.
We saw, you need to figure out how many different polar bears, but if you just count up the number of bears we saw, or the number of bears sightings, maybe more accurately, 23 bears. So we saw the male, this guy, male 3 times. And
one mom with 2 twice.
One mom with 2 twice, yeah.
So this was another one of those magical moments, because, typically the scouts found these guys and then they would bring us to them. But we had stopped to have like a break and hot chocolate, and we were shooting the ptarmigan, and all of a sudden we were getting ready to load up and go. And all of a sudden here comes this guy from far. You just see him walking right towards us again. Definitely not worried about people, which probably isn't a good thing.
He really didn't care about us. This is one of the other people on the trips, their video.
And that's a cracker shell going
So
by.
yeah, so he was getting a little too close, so the guides let him know that.
He was probably about, I would say 25, 20. The bears got closer because I think they've had too many close encounters.
Yep. Candy and I have, so we both shoot and we both do all this stuff independent of each other, as far as the processing. And we ended up, as we were putting our pictures together for this, we both put this picture into black and white. And we both have played a good bit with trying to do black and whites. I love black and white photography. It's hard to do with these, I'm finding, to get enough contrast, I think. So I'll play more really early on. We're both early on in our processing of these pictures. But I think they make beautiful black and whites, but I'm just having a hard time getting them to pop a little bit more.
That's Kyle, one of our guides, way out
He liked to climb up on things and then slide down them.
on his feet. So this day, we ended up, this was our longest day out, and we went across, went back a different way than across the top. We went across the land bridge. And we got to the other side, and as you saw, we ride in single file, and a lot of that is so that kind of the path is tracked. And the sled in front of us, so that we were the third sled. The first sled made it through. The second sled was almost through and got stuck. And our guide Jamie had kind of revved up, and so we almost hit these guys. And his sled got buried. So we were in, I don't know, probably a foot of slushy, wet, watery stuff. And it's amazing. All the Inuit guides disconnected their sleds. They were up there in a heartbeat. They got ropes on us and eventually pulled us out.
Rescued us. See how wet and slushy that is. It just snowmobile wasn't going anywhere. And obviously pulling a good bit of weight.
We were, yeah, a good bit of weight, us and our camera.
That's the whole sled.
It'll take a while because it's another video.
So this is the same scene. I just include this because I laugh every time I seen this. I probably watched it 20 times, but this is two of our other travel mates, Emma and Barbie over here. Barbie's being helped by one of the guides because that's that thick, wet snow, and Barbie is in her 70s, so was having just a hard time moving her feet to get out of there. So Emma's waiting, and then she gets set free, and Emma's walking up. And I took more video on this trip than I ever do, and all with my iPhone. And I still don't know why I was pointing the camera back there, but I'm glad that I was. Just because I'm going to bribe Emma with this.
Emma is a British pediatric intensive care doctor. She's absolutely hysterical.
Yeah, really funny. So the snow, just really for the whole trip, you'd have some where it's nice and packed and easy to walk on, but you just never knew with any step when you weren't gonna post hole and go down. So it was a process.
More Northern Lights.
And this was nice because this was the earliest night that they came out. So as we're taking pictures, you can see we still have some sunset light in there. So I love that. I thought it was pretty unique and cool to have sunset light and Northern Lights all in one image.
And to go back to what Louis commented on earlier, this particular night, it was early, and most of the guides were, you know, whatever, cleaning up, getting ready, and Louis and I and two other of our compatriots were out there shooting. You know, we just went out there. The electric fence was always open until about 9:30 at night, and then they closed it, so it was still open. And we went out, and all of a sudden, Caleb, who was one of the leaders, he comes out and he's walking out and he goes, "Who's out there?" And I said, "Oh, you know, Candy, Louis, Jason, Russell." And he goes, "Nobody with a gun?" And I'm like, "Oh, no one with a gun," not even thinking about the fact that there could be a polar bear right around the corner. So it was a moment of aha moment.
Just nice little chunk of ice. We obviously concentrated mostly on finding bears. Andy made some comment that, you know, the trip should be 2 weeks long. You should do animals for a week and then just landscape stuff for a week, because again, the ice formations and, you know, so much to do there. So did a little bit of both.
And this was our little bear friend again, the male, and he was close to camp. And this was our last full day. And he basically hung out with us for a couple of hours, just walked kind of right towards us. And
it was a great show. I included this picture. I like the picture. Andy made some comments, and, you know, as wildlife people, there's something about not being able to see the feet. but it was really tough in so many situations to actually get the foot of the bear just because of the topography and the snow and the ice, you know, was just always hidden. But as he came up on this, and I was aware of this when I shot it, but even more so when after going through it, I like that you can't see his feet. To me, it's a nice, moody kind of mysterious picture with this guy coming towards us.
And there's his feet.
And then you can see his feet when he got nice and close. So we had one thing we had not seen that we had looked at and heard about was bears getting up on icebergs to scope out the land or just to rest up there. So here's our little friend here going by this, you know, unbelievable, gorgeous chunk of blue ice, and you know, just hoping that he's going to go up there. So he passes along and he's walking there, and then he starts looking up. You can see that's maybe he's about a third of the way up. So we were hoping that he would go up there, hang out, and then we would just, you know, be able to play with him for not play with the bear, but play with the cameras with the bear for some length of time. But he sort of got up to the top and looked around and looked down and decided it wasn't for him. And apparently it was too slippery to walk down. So he turned butt backwards and he slid all the way down that whole iceberg. It was absolutely hysterical.
Wow.
And then he wandered off.
And then he wandered off and bid us goodbye.
And our very last, that afternoon after the polar bear, we went to a nearby kind of mountain right behind camp and walked up there. And that's just a photo of Lewis being pensive, looking at the two icebergs. I just thought he looks so serene.
A little bit of sadness, probably.
I was talking to Jay, and Jay was great. He spent a little time with Lewis talking about climate change. Lewis's nephew teaches science in Denver and wanted just their, you know, kind of their impression on how things have changed. And Jay was very kind to do about a minute video with Lewis about that. And it definitely has changed for them.
Yeah, it's changed really drastically in the last 10 years. Or he talked about the formation of the ice and the breakup of the ice is a big thing for them. And he said in the last 10 years, the ice is forming about a month later and breaking up about a month earlier.
And, you know, their subsistence, most of their livelihood is from subsistence hunting. And so that means no seals. Polar bears don't have seals. Harder to catch fish, you know, all kinds of different things.
And these are seal pants, actually, that his wife made. And while we're up on that mountain, boys being boys and girls being girls, you know, you might as well, I didn't do this, but might as well take a trash bag and make, you know, put it over your pants and slide down a hill.
That was our fearless leader, Andy.
Our fearless leader, Andy, yeah.
That's camp in the background.
It always takes a while after video to get to the next.
You guys have seen that
picture.
one. The last day. And the whole crew, almost the whole crew, not quite the whole crew.
A couple staff members still at camp, but that was the whole group. Camp
And
in the
that's
sea.
the end.
And that is it.
So you guys can wake up now. Does anybody have any questions?
You know, I sort of missed a chat that Gigi sent a while ago. She did have a question about ask Lewis what was in the foreground lighting, or what was lighting up the foreground in one of the pictures. And I'm not quite sure which picture it was. So
It was probably one of the Northern Lights.
Yeah, the
pictures.
Northern Lights. So we put lights, once was inside the igloo. And for another one, I had a little Luxley light that I actually put behind the igloo. And that was enough to, when we put the light in the igloo, it really blew it out. So I think the ones where you see the blue light, that light is actually sitting outside the igloo, but just kind of shining in. I just kind of stuck it right in the snow. And the one with the big iceberg, that was a huge flashlight that because we were standing a good bit of ways from that. So that was a
And then
flashlight.
the rest of the light was usually northern lights. With the snow, they were extremely reflective, so sometimes the snow looked green and I'm like, who's got a green light on? Well, it was from the northern
Yeah,
lights.
yeah, there was some that, this color, and as you know, or maybe not, we've seen sometimes where you can see color with the naked eye, but for the most part here, we have hints of color, but of course nothing like that. That all comes out due to long exposures. But for the most part, it's just kind of opaque looking hazy light, but very obvious because they were very active. So you could see it moving.
So they look more like just black and white to the naked eye?
Yep. Yeah, for the most part. Even up there and even on the strong night.
That was just wonderful, Candy and Lewis. Enjoyed
Thank
that so
you.
much.
It was really, really an incredible trip. We've been blessed and fortunate to do a lot of travel. And, I never say that one trip is the best of all time, but this is certainly up there as tied for best. It was, just the people and the experience, and, polar bears are just incredible. And to me, the fact that this was so unique, we figure somewhere, in the neighborhood of 125 people have ever done this trip. So it was really something to experience.
Thank you guys for watching. I
thank you
hope we
for-
didn't bore you.
Well, thank you for showing it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thanks so much. It was awesome.
And if anybody is interested in it, we can certainly send you the info there. I think Barney, did you look into it at all?
Barney's MIA.
Barney's MIA.
Yeah, yeah, we did. And they're booked up for a couple of years. So anybody that's interested, you're probably looking at 2024, 25.
We still have to make up all the 2021 people, so.
Yeah, there's probably there's probably people from 21. So we got bounced from 20 to 22, and I assume the 21 people got bounced up to 23. So
you guys had all of your own Arctic gear. You didn't rent any of it from them?
we had our own, yeah. So they do a rental package, which very similar to what we had, and it was I don't know, it's $500 or $600 for the rental package. So since we do, not quite this cold, but cold weather stuff anyway, so we have accumulated all our own stuff over the years.
Well, great photography from both of you. Really enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Seriously, thanks
And
for
yes,
watching.
and fine, I appreciate it.
Thank you.
I thought we were all going to get a break from our meeting, but I said, this would be a good opportunity to share some pictures. We don't do any social media stuff. We do slideshows and put them on Vimeo, and that's sort of our extent of sharing. So it's fun to be able to do this with you guys.
And we'd be interested to watch anybody else's slideshow too.
Well, any other questions? Comments? Okay, we are going on record as the shortest PMP meeting ever.
All right. I knew we could do it.
So,
Oh,
all
wait,
right.
isn't there voting now?
Well,
That was
hey,
it.
David,
Yes.
this is Barney. Just since we have some extra time, I know a number of us are very interested in do a lot of nighttime photography. So Lewis and Candy, if you could, you said that your typical exposures were under 13 seconds, and the lenses that you were using were 70 to 200 and shooting around 2.8. Is that right?
I was using actually a 14 millimeter Rokinon lens. That's a 2.8, I think. 2.8 or 1.4. I think it's a 2.8. And
2.8,
Candy,
yeah.
and Candy's
I have a 24
24 1.4. Yeah.
and I was stopped down to usually right around 2 to try to get less of the coma out on the edges.
Oh, yeah. That haunted me the last couple of weeks down in Utah. So that lens actually ended up going back in the bag, not to come
Yeah.
out again.
Oh, yeah. And the 14, depending on where I had, especially with the Igloo, it really distorted the Igloo if it was off to the side. So it was almost too wide. It was a really fun lens, and I got a lot in there, but I sort of didn't realize that because I wasn't able to look at those pictures. And I played with exposure times. Maybe I got down to 5 seconds, and probably anywhere up to 20 to 30, but they started getting a little too, there was too
Yeah.
much movement. And then I was really trying to keep the noise down as much as I could. So
And your ISO
but-
at that point?
probably I was maybe up to 4,000 at times. Then I tried to keep it down maybe around 1,200. And because we didn't have the time to be able to do a whole lot of processing, because once I got home, between Lightroom and even more so Topaz really cleaned them up pretty well.
Mhm.
And there was, let's see, the first night I did them all with the Z9. The second night I did it with the D6, and it did better. But still, I think they both cleaned up fine. I'm happy with shots from both cameras.
Great. Well, yeah, they're just spectacular.
Wow.
They're beyond good. They're spectacular. Thank you for
Well,
sharing.
easy subject.
Yeah, and I find with the 850 that I get a lot of noise and I hate noise. So I was really trying to keep it at 1250. I think I got up to 2,500 and I used the G5 one night, but you miss out on the richness when you don't have all the bigger sensor. So
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
thank you.
Yeah, thank you guys. I'll try to, it'll be a couple of days because I'm traveling, but I'll try to get this also up on YouTube real quick and send it out in the next newsletter. The link for
Great.
the
Appreciate
content, yeah, and the link for y'all's presentation.
Okay. Yeah. Want to see that and see how everybody else's pictures looked.
Yeah, I want to see that.
Looked like it was a good bunch.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And did you have a link for the electric gloves too?
Yes,
info?
I do. I will, we have everybody's email address.
We have everybody, all right, or just send an email. We'll send it to you.
Yeah, I swear to God, they're a godsend. I mean, I use them all the time in the Tetons too. Even we were just over there and it wasn't that cold, but instead of wearing gloves, I just had those on and my hands were warm. I mean, I love those things.
They're good until somebody tells you you have 50-pound weight limit on a plane and you have 30 pounds of batteries.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was surprised we didn't melt the sea ice.
We also had heated
batteries.
foot pads, which are really nice, which are nice and cheap
Yeah.
too, that we found on Amazon, I think.
I can send you the link.
So
for
just a
this
foot
too.
pad that was battery operated, and that worked great, even
Well,
with the
yeah.
bath and boost, which are pretty warm. But those heated foot pads just on their lowest setting, those were godsends.
So how are you recharging at night on those?
Oh yeah, good question. So generators, they have generators, which we thought they were just going to run during the day, but they ran them 24/7.
And everybody had their own strip and their
So,
tent,
yeah.
which most places we go, it's a common area and you kind of got to fight for a plug. Everybody had your own strip and you could charge to your heart's delight,
Wow.
which
Yeah,
was nice.
and we really didn't have, I brought a ton of batteries for the cameras. And I never went through more than a battery in a day. Never got to a second battery. So if I was going to do it again, I would take 2 batteries per camera and that would be it. I'd be careful, if we're just sitting around a while, I'd put one in the inside pocket or something, but really didn't have bad issues with the batteries.
And again, we didn't have minus, we got to probably
Right.
minus 15 at night.
Yeah.
We didn't have the minus 30, minus 40. I think that would have been more challenging. And the guys the week ahead of us did, and then 2 weeks after us, they had 0 visibility any night. So they had no northern
Oh, wow.
lights. So we were so flipping lucky.
Yeah, we got lucky.
Well,
Okay.
great job.
Thank you. Thanks, David,
guys.
for taking time out of your
Yeah.
moving and
Yeah, no problem.
It goes well.
Oh, yeah. It's gonna be, give me an excuse to come to Denver. Yeah,
Okay.
cool. Well, I love the shots and yeah, again, and congratulations to all the other people that are on that actually got an award at the contest. So
thank you.
yeah, and real quickly, I guess I should mention this coming meeting this month. We've got a local wildlife photographer who kind of specializes in camera traps. So her name's Savannah Rose
All right.
Burgess. So yeah, if you're interested in that, that's going to be the next meeting. So, cool.
That's next month though, right, David?
Yeah, in June.
Yeah.
Uh, third Wednesday in June, whatever day that is.
Yeah. Yep, it's on the calendar. So,
Yeah.
all right. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you,
All right.
guys.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Links.
Did you-
Oh, I see what you're saying.